They said the twins were blind. But when Lena knelt before them that first morning, whispering words no one else had dared to say, they turned their faces toward the light. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Lena clasped her hands tighter inside her coat sleeves as the wrought iron gates creaked open, revealing the estate like a sleeping beast beneath the gray November sky. The house, if one could call a mansion with 14 chimneys a house, sat at the edge of the world, surrounded by trimmed hedges that were too perfect, too clean. Like someone had tried to cut grief into shape and failed. She stepped off the shuttle van, boots crunching against the gravel, the cold wind biting through her second-hand jacket. Her suitcase, a faded thing with a broken wheel, tilted with every tug. A young woman in a dark uniform stood by the door. "You're the new maid?" Lena nodded. "You'll report to Mrs. Hadley. Don't speak unless spoken to." And the girl hesitated, eyes flickering toward the upper windows. "Don't stare at the children. You'll understand soon enough." Lena's lips parted, but the words she wanted to say got stuck in her throat. She simply nodded again. Inside, the house was pristine and cold, marble floors, dark wood accents, and that kind of heavy silence that didn't feel peaceful. Mrs. Hadley was a thin woman in her 50s, sharp-eyed and mechanical in her welcome. "You'll do the east wing. Children's quarters. Laundry. Meals. Dusting. Do not initiate interaction. Do not enter the master's study unless requested." Lena followed her through the maze of halls, memorizing turns, stairwells, which rug corners curled, and which floorboards sighed. Every step she took, she felt the house breathing around her, as if it hadn't decided whether to tolerate her yet. "And here," Mrs. Hadley said, stopping at 2 white-paneled doors. "The twins. You won't need to clean unless requested. They're quiet. Stay out of the way." "Are they unwell?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Hadley paused. "They're blind. That's all you need to know. Now get settled. Breakfast is at 6. Meanwhile, in another wing of the estate, Damien Cole adjusted the cuffs of his shirt with practiced ease. The mirror above his fireplace reflected a man perfectly put together, silver cufflinks, tie symmetrical, hair trimmed. But beneath the tailored suit, his chest ached in that familiar, invisible way. He turned to the window, watching the new maid from afar. She moved slowly as if carrying ghosts. "Third one this quarter," he muttered. He had hired her without checking her full references. Strange. He never did that. But something in her eyes, cautious, soft, unreadable, had stalled him. Damien looked away, setting down his whiskey untouched. The next morning, Lena woke before dawn, dressed in plain black, tied her hair back, and headed for the kitchen. As she passed the children's corridor, she slowed, hearing nothing. Not a whisper. No playing. No music. Just air and the soft tick of a grandfather clock somewhere too far away. She approached the door and knocked softly. No answer. Her fingers curled against her apron. Something tugged at her, curiosity, maybe? Or instinct. She turned the knob. The room was dark, even at sunrise. 2 small forms sat by the window, twins. A boy and a girl, maybe 8. Motionless. Their eyes were open but vacant, not white or glazed, just empty. They didn't turn toward her. They didn't flinch. They just sat there, still as statues. Lena's heart tugged. "Good morning," she said gently, inching forward. No response. "I'm Lena. I'll be helping around here." Still nothing. She moved closer, kneeling beside the girl. "Do you want me to open the curtains?" The girl blinked, slowly. Then a pause. "Yes," came a whisper. So soft it could have been imagined. Lena reached up and pulled the drapes apart, letting in the winter light. The boy turned his head toward the warmth. His lips parted slightly. Lena didn't move. She just watched them, heart aching. No one had told her their names. No one had told her they still heard, that they still felt. She turned to leave, but before she closed the door, she looked back. The girl's eyes were still on the light. And the boy was facing Lena. Not quite seeing but aware. Have you ever met someone who saw you more clearly than anyone else? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone feel less alone. The third morning, Lena found the girl crouched by the baseboard heater, her fingers pressed against the vent, eyes blank but steady. The boy sat near the window, listening to birdsong that came and went with the wind. No one had said their names. No nameplates. No labels on their belongings. Even their clothing, identical grays and creams, seemed designed to make them vanish. Lena set down the laundry basket and sat cross-legged between them. "Do you want me to play something?" she asked softly. The girl didn't move. But the boy said, "Not music." "What then?" "Tell something," he said. "The thing. From before." Lena blinked. "I don't," she hesitated. But then something cracked inside her. A buried story. She leaned back, resting her arms across her knees. "There was a dog," she said, her voice quieter than the humming vent. "He was blind. A rescue. My father found him limping down the highway. Called him Hank." The boy turned his head slightly. Listening. He'd bump into everything. Walls, furniture, legs. But he knew the way to my bed. Boys. Every night. Like he knew where the safe was. The girl's chin shifted just slightly toward her. "And one day he led me outside during a fire. We were the only ones home. He couldn't see, but he felt it. Pulled me by my sleeve." Silence stretched between them. But this time it didn't feel empty. "What happened to him?" the boy asked. Lena swallowed. "He didn't make it back in." The girl whispered, "He saw you." Lena's breath caught. Then something broke. The boy stood up. No cane. No hand searching the air. He moved toward her slowly, unsteadily, like a thought half-formed. He reached her knees, crouched down, and touched her hand. No one had touched her in months. That night, she was pulled aside by Mrs. Hadley. "You are not to speak to them unsupervised." Lena didn't argue. But she returned the next morning. And the next. She brought smells into the room, cinnamon, oranges, rosemary, placed them beneath their noses and let them name them by memory. "You were a teacher?" the boy asked one day. Lena shook her head. "No." "Then why do you know?" "Because once I forgot how to feel. So I had to relearn." It happened the seventh morning. The boy had trailed her quietly into the hall, just a few steps, holding onto the back of her skirt. Lena turned, startled. "Go back," she whispered gently. "I want to know what the sun feels like on the stairs," he said. She glanced around. The corridor was empty. The staff usually avoided the east wing before breakfast. She took his hand. Together they stepped out. 2 minutes. Maybe 3. She guided his fingers over the banister, placed his palms in the light shaft filtering through the stained glass window. He smiled, actually smiled. The girl peeked from the doorway. Then she stepped out, barefoot. She touched her brother's elbow, then took Lena's other hand. No words. Just warmth. Just sun. Just the impossibility of children who had lived like shadows choosing, for the first time, to step into the day. An hour later, Damien stood at the top of the stairs, still as stone. He had come early to grab a file from the study before his meeting. Instead, he'd seen them. Lena. The winds. Holding hands in the corridor. The girl with her face tilted toward a patch of morning light. No crying. No panic. Just stillness. Peaceful. Almost holy. His throat clenched. He left without a word. That evening he reviewed the estate's security footage. He watched her take their hands. He watched them step into the light. He replayed it twice. The third time he paused on the girl's smile. Not wide. Not loud. Just alive. His hands gripped the arms of the chair. His jaw tightened. Then, softly as if to no one. How did she do that? The following day, Lena was told to report to the study. Damien didn't look up when she entered. Sit. She sat. I reviewed the camera footage. You broke protocol. Lena said nothing. You were warned not to engage. Not to interfere. Not to. They are not furniture, she said quietly. His eyes snapped up. Cold. Excuse me? They're not glass. You're so afraid they'll shatter, you've stopped letting them live. A long pause. You've been here 1 week. And in that week your daughter spoke. Your son followed someone. They touched sunlight. What do you want me to do? Pretend I didn't see that? Damien stood, slowly. You don't know what happened to them. Lena stood too. You're right. But I see what's happening now. He stared at her, longer than was polite, longer than was comfortable. Finally he said, You're dismissed for today. But his voice lacked conviction. That night, the twins waited for her. When she didn't come, they didn't speak. They simply sat. By the window. Waiting. Can children heal adults more than the other way around? Tell us below. Do you believe love can restore what trauma has buried? The next morning, Lena's key card didn't work. She stood at the door to the east wing, pressing it again. The red light blinked back at her, indifferent. Mrs. Hadley appeared from the hallway with 2 kitchen staff. You've been reassigned to West Laundry. No need to return to the children's quarters unless requested. Lena opened her mouth to speak. But Mrs. Hadley added flatly, the order came from Mr. Cole himself. The laundry room smelled of bleach and indifference. For hours, Lena folded shirts and sheets in silence, her hands moving without thought. Her ears strained for footsteps, a summons, anything, but the day passed untouched. She saw the twins only once, through a passing hallway window. They walked between 2 staff members, eyes forward, shoulders tense. They didn't speak. Damien avoided his home office that evening. He lingered in the library, pages open but unread. Firelight flickered against the shelves, casting long shadows across the floor. He remembered the sound of his daughter's voice. Not just the words. The tone. There had been color in it, uncertain yes, but alive. And now? Silence again. Back to the silence he understood. The one that didn't ask anything of him. Lena didn't sleep that night. She replayed everything. Their hands in hers, the sunlight, the smile, the study. She had pushed too hard. She had forgotten her place. This was not her home. Not her family. She had crossed a line, and now, the children paid for it. She rose before dawn, paced the floor, pulled out a notepad she hadn't used in years. At the top, she wrote, Do not get involved. Underneath it, too late. On the 4th morning, she returned to the kitchen early, hoping to catch Mrs. Hadley. Instead, she found the boy. Standing in the hallway. Alone. Silent. She rushed to him. What are you doing here? He didn't answer. His eyes didn't move. Did you sneak out? She whispered. His lips parted. I waited. For what? For your story. Lena's chest tightened. You weren't supposed to come back, he added. I know, she said. His hand found her sleeve. Tell me the dog's story again. She looked down the corridor. Empty. She crouched. I can't. Not here. His grip didn't loosen. Then she noticed it, his shoulders. They were shaking. Not from cold. But something quieter. Confusion. He hadn't understood why she'd disappeared. He thought it meant something about him. Damien watched the scene from the landing above. He hadn't meant to follow. Hadn't meant to watch. But there she was again, crouched, listening, hands open. Not speaking loudly. Not performing. Just present. And his son had followed her. An hour later, he sat at his desk, hand hovering over the intercom button. He pressed it. Have Lena report to my office. When she entered, he didn't look up. You're creating dependency, he said. Lena said nothing. They follow you. They listen to you. They search for you. That's not sustainable. Her voice was calm. Or maybe they're remembering how to want something again. He closed the file in front of him. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I don't. Because no one tells me. They just push me out. His jaw tightened. There was an accident, he said finally. Lena's breath caught. He had never mentioned the past. Not once. 3 years ago. Their mother. A car. They were in the back seat. The doctors say the blindness is psychological. Trauma response. He said it clinically, like a report. But no progress, he added. Until now. She stepped forward. So why stop it? Because it's not about healing if they become dependent on you. Lena shook her head. It's not dependence. It's trust. He stood abruptly. And then, quietly, almost too quietly, he said, "You remind me of her." Lena froze. Not in appearance. In the way she refused to accept silence as safety. The pause. "I buried her without saying goodbye. Because I thought that was mercy." Another pause. "I'm not sure I was right." That night, Lena returned to her quarters and didn't cry. But she didn't sleep either. The next morning, the twins didn't appear at breakfast. At noon, their tutor reported they had refused to engage. At 4, they still hadn't left their room. Damien stood outside their door, hand resting on the knob. He couldn't open it. Couldn't face the idea that his pulling away had dragged them back into darkness. Lena stood on the back patio, watching the gray sky turn. The air smelled like impending rain. She heard footsteps. Turned. It was the girl, holding her brother's hand. They stood still, unsure. Then, wordlessly, they walked toward her. The girl reached into her coat pocket. A folded napkin. Inside it, a button from Lena's sweater. "Dropped," the girl said. Lena took it gently. Her voice trembled. "Thank you." The boy touched her wrist. "Don't stop telling the stories." The power cut came at 6:42 p.m. One flicker. Then black. All lights died at once. The estate hummed into stillness. Outside, the storm gathered without warning. Wind pressed against the windows. Rain turned the gardens into blurred ink. In the hallway, Lena stepped out of the linen closet and paused. The air had shifted. Still but watchful. A moment later, the alarm panel flashed red. System malfunction. Generators disabled. The twins' corridor was darker than the rest. No backup lights. No sound. Lena moved quickly, hands brushing the walls for guidance. She pushed open their door and froze. The girl sat near the window, knees to chest. The boy stood rigid by the bed. "Hey," Lena said gently. "It's okay." No response. She knelt between them, placing a hand on each shoulder. "I'm here." The boy whispered, "It's loud." "The storm." He nodded. "I don't like it." Lena stayed still. They didn't cry. Didn't ask questions. But they didn't move away from her either. Downstairs, Damien snapped his flashlight on and grabbed the emergency binder. The estate's generator had been serviced last week. This shouldn't be possible. He reached the main panel. No response. He clicked his intercom. "Of course," he muttered. Then he heard something. Footsteps. Light ones. From above. Lena guided the twins into the hallway. She walked slowly, one child on each side, arms looped through theirs. She had no flashlight. No candle. Just their hands. "Just trust." Damien met them at the second-floor landing. For a second, none of them spoke. The twins stood close to Lena, heads bowed against her sides. He looked at her, so calm, so still, and said, "Follow me." He led them to the small den at the back of the house. No windows. Thick walls. There was a fireplace cold for years. He knelt to light it. Lena stayed by the door. The children watched the glow catch, the room blooming into flickering warmth. "I didn't think you lit fires," she said quietly. Damien shrugged. "I don't usually need to." She looked at the twins. "Tonight feels different." Time passed quietly. The twins curled on the couch, heads resting on each other. Lena sat cross-legged on the rug. Damien stood for a while, then sank into the armchair behind her. The only sounds were wind and crackling wood. Then Damien said, "You know, they didn't speak for months after the crash." Lena turned slightly. Not even to each other. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "When I brought them home, they wouldn't eat unless I left the room. I thought if I gave them space, they'd come back to me." "They were waiting for you to come to them," Lena said. He nodded once. "They were 3. They cried for her for weeks. I started hiring staff to avoid the noise. And when it stopped?" He looked at the flames. "I told myself they were healing." Silence stretched. Then Lena said, "Sometimes, silence is grief's way of pretending it's gone." The storm thickened outside. The girl stirred. "Can she tell a story?" Lena smiled gently. "Do you want one?" The boy nodded. Damien started to rise. "Let me." But the boy reached for Lena's hand. So Damien sat back down. Lena began. Once, in a house where no one laughed, a little girl found a box. Inside it was a bird made of glass. No one knew how it got there. No one dared touch it. The twins leaned in. She took it anyway. Hid it. Slept with it under her pillow. Damien watched her face as she spoke. Not just her voice. Her restraint. The way she poured care into every word without trying to be seen. She said it sang to her at night. Not with music, but with memory. It reminded her of someone she'd lost. The firelight flickered over the girl's cheeks. A tear slid quietly down. And even though it was made of glass and might break at any moment, she kept it anyway. Because it was real. And hers. By the time the power returned, the children were asleep. Lena stood slowly, tucking a blanket over their legs. Damien stood too, quietly. He gestured toward the hallway. She followed. In the corridor, he didn't speak for a long time. They've never fallen asleep outside their room. Lena nodded. Damien looked at her. You're not what I expected. She met his gaze. You're exactly what I expected. Until tonight. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he said, stay with them tonight. In the guest room next door. Just until the storm passes. She paused. That's against your own policy. He stepped back. I'll make an exception. In the morning when she woke, she heard it. Laughter. Not loud. Not forced. Just two small voices giggling in the room next door. Lena sat up. And smiled. The week after the storm, the house softened. The twins no longer waited to be asked. They followed Lena from room to room, trailing her scent, her voice, the rhythm of her footsteps like anchors. They spoke more. Small things. Colors they remembered. Dreams. Laughter that startled the staff. But none of them asked why Lena was still there. Not even Damien. One afternoon, Lena found the girls sitting at the piano. Fingers hovering above the keys. Not playing, just touching. The lid had dust on it, but someone had wiped a line across it recently. Do you know how? Lena asked. The girl shook her head. My mother used to play, she whispered. Lena sat beside her. You remember the sound? She nodded. It was soft. Like water. The girl pressed one key. A note lingered. Lena didn't stop her. That night, Damien walked in to find the boy drawing. No instructions. No supervision. Just lines, clumsy, looping, of birds and clouds and shapes that could have been trees. You're drawing. The boy didn't look up. Lena said it doesn't matter if it's ugly. Just if it's real. Damien blinked. She says drawing is like saying something without using your mouth. He crouched beside him. What's this? The boy pointed. That's the road. Damien froze. The one from before, the boy added. Damien swallowed. From the accident? A nod. The paper shook slightly. There were stars, the boy whispered. I remember stars. Damien placed a hand gently on his back. It was the first time he had touched either of them since the crash. Later that night, Damien stood outside Lena's door. He knocked once. She opened in her sleep shirt and sweater, hair tied up, eyes cautious. I need to ask you something. She stepped aside. The fireplace in the guest parlor was cold. Neither lit it. They sat across from each other, the silence easy now, familiar. Do you remember the exact day you applied here? He asked. Lena nodded. Yes. You sent the application the night of the 3rd anniversary of the crash. Her breath caught. He watched her. I don't believe in coincidences. Lena stared at the floor. I didn't know who you were, she said finally. Not at first. He didn't interrupt. I was working in home care. Elderly woman in a town near the crash site. She read your name in the paper one morning, an article about your company. She went quiet. Said she knew you. That your wife used to take the kids to her bakery. Damien's jaw clenched. She said something strange. That she saw the twins that day. The day of the crash. That they were running. Not in the car. What are you saying? His voice dropped. She said they were on the road. Alone. The pause. Your wife was chasing them. Damien stood, stepping back like she'd struck him. No. She wasn't driving recklessly. She was. No. You didn't know. His hand shook. You thought she crashed because she lost control. But she was trying to find them. He turned toward the dark window. They were fighting, he said softly. The night before. About the company. About me never being home. He rubbed his face. I thought she drove off angry. That it was her fault. Lena stood slowly. It wasn't. Silence. He turned back to her. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I wasn't sure it was my place. He looked at her. No one's ever known how to talk to me. I wasn't trying to talk to you. I was trying to see you. He sat again. Something inside him loosened. Then quietly he asked, why were you really in that town? Lena looked away. I lost someone, she said. A child. She nodded. Son, she added. 2 years ago. He was 5. Her hands clenched in her lap. He had a heart condition. We were on the donor list. Waiting. Always waiting. Her voice wavered. And then one day, we weren't. Damien didn't move. She continued, I quit my job. I ran. Every noise reminded me of his breathing monitor. I stopped answering calls. Until that woman mentioned your children. The pause. I thought maybe I could still do something good. Even if I didn't know how. They sat there, 2 people cracked open in the middle of a silent room. Not touching. Not fixing. Just sharing the weight. The next morning, the girl ran her fingers across the piano keys. This time she played 3 soft notes. They weren't a song. But they were the beginning of one. The call came mid-morning. Lena was in the garden with the twins, guiding their hands over the herbs, basil, mint, rosemary, when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A known number. She almost ignored it. But something made her answer. Miss Adler? Her chest tightened. No one called her by that name anymore. Yes. This is Detective Briggs, upstate jurisdiction. We've had an inquiry related to your file. My file. About the incident. 2 years ago. The boy. Lena froze. I don't understand. There's been a motion filed by your former in-laws. They're petitioning to re-examine the conditions around your son's care. Your employment here came up in a background check. The world slowed. Miss Adler, we're required to inform you in case your current employer is contacted. She ended the call with shaking fingers. Behind her, the twins laughed at something, giggling as they smelled crushed mint on their palms. She couldn't join them. Not now. That night, Damien found her in the library, sitting in the corner, spine curled forward like she was bracing for a blow. He approached quiet. Are you all right? She didn't look up. No, she whispered. He knelt beside her. What happened? She shook her head. I should have told you everything from the beginning. He waited. There was more to my son's death than I said. He was on a waiting list, yes. But I missed an appointment. A critical one. Her voice cracked. I overslept. Just 1 hour. I had taken a sleeping pill the night before. He needed to be monitored constantly. And that day, I wasn't there. Damien said nothing. I was tired. I was grieving even while he was still alive. She finally looked at him. And now there's an inquiry. My in-laws want to reopen the case. If they dig, they'll come here. To your home. To your children. He stood slowly. You should have told me sooner. I was afraid you'd send me away. I might have. That hurt. But it was honest. Damien paced. His hands clenched, then relaxed. Then clenched again. I have to protect them, he said. I know. He turned back to her. They trust you. I trust you. But if this explodes, if they come here with questions, cameras, records, I can't let them be exposed again. Lena nodded. Then I'll leave. He blinked. What? You don't have to ask. I'll go. The quiet between them cut deeper than anything spoken. The library suddenly felt smaller. Heavy. She stood. He didn't stop her. The next morning her room was empty. No note. No suitcase. Just gone. The twins noticed by noon. The boy refused lunch. The girl stood at the piano but wouldn't play a note. Damien watched them. He tried to fill the space with routine. tutors, books, storybooks. None of it held. On the third night he sat at the dining table and stared at the empty chair across from him. He picked up his glass, set it back down. Then he said quietly, "I should have told her to stay." Lena walked for hours the night she left. Eventually she found a motel, paid in cash, tried to sleep. But the silence there was different. It wasn't grief silence. It was absence. It echoed. On the fourth day, she called the estate's landline. No one answered. She didn't try again. The twins sat by the east window every morning after that. No voices. No smiles. Just waiting. The motel walls were the color of old paper. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, watching morning light creep through broken blinds. She hadn't unpacked. She hadn't slept. On the nightstand, a paper napkin from the estate's kitchen, folded carefully, still holding the tiny sweater button the girl had returned to her. She picked it up, turned it in her fingers. No sound. But her chest ached like someone was calling her name from very far away. 3 towns over, Damien stood in the estate's garage, staring at the black SUV. The same one he hadn't driven since the accident. It was clean, maintained, but untouched. He opened the door, sat in the driver's seat. His hands gripped the wheel. 3 years. He turned the key. The engine hummed to life. He turned it off. In the hallway, the twins sat at the top of the stairs, backs against the wall. They had stopped asking. Now they just waited. That afternoon, Lena walked to the corner market for tea. At the register, the cashier smiled and said, "You're the lady from that big house. With the kids, right?" Lena froze. "I saw you once. You were showing them how to smell rosemary." Sweet moment. Lena managed a smile. Paid in cash. Walked back slowly. Damien sat in the study, staring at a photograph. His wife. Smiling. Hair tucked behind her ear. He turned the photo down. Opened a drawer. Took out an envelope he hadn't touched since the crash. Inside, an unfinished letter from her. Only 3 lines. "They're scared, Damien. But they need to know we won't leave them in the dark. You especially." He folded it. Put it in his pocket. Lena stood by the motel window as dusk arrived. Her phone buzzed once. Blocked number. She didn't answer. Instead, she wrote something on the napkin. Just a word. "Forgive." Damien found the twins asleep in the den, curled up together with one of Lena's old scarves between them. He stood for a long time. Then walked to the piano room. She'd left her notebook there. He opened it. Page after page of quiet drawings. Moments he hadn't known anyone noticed. His son touching a windowpane. His daughter smiling into a sunbeam. And one sketch of him, standing in shadow. But someone had drawn a beam of light reaching him anyway. That night, Lena packed her bag. Not because she was sure, but because she was done running from the part of her that still wanted to stay. The next morning, Damien told the staff he'd be gone for the day. No explanation. Just, hold all calls. Watch the kids. He drove east. No jivis. Just memory. Lena stepped out of the motel room just as the black SUV pulled into the parking lot. She froze. So did he. Neither moved. Then he stepped out. No coat. No script. Just him. She folded her arms. "You found me." He nodded once. "You weren't hiding." Silence stretched. Then he said, "They've stopped talking again." Lena's face cracked. "I'm sorry." "So am I." She nodded. "I should have stayed," she whispered. "I should have asked you to." They stood like that for a long moment, saying more in the space between words than words ever could. He reached into his coat. Pulled out the folded letter. "Read it." She did. Then looked up at him. "You still love her." "I always will." "And me. I think I'm learning how to love again. Because of you." He took a step forward. "Come home." Lena didn't move. Then, quietly, "Not as a maid." "No." He looked at her, unblinking. "As Lena." The estate gates opened at 9:04 a.m. The gravel crunched under the weight of return. Lena sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap. She didn't speak. Neither did Damien. But the quiet between them felt different now. Not absence, readiness. Inside, the house looked the same. But the air had shifted. Mrs. Hadley blinked when she saw them enter. "You're back." Lena offered a faint smile. "If that's still allowed." Mrs. Hadley didn't answer with words. Just a nod. A flicker of relief, quickly hidden. The twins were in the den, lying on the rug with a book between them. When they saw her, they didn't speak. They ran. The girl collided with Lena's waist first. The boy wrapped his arms around her middle. Neither let go. She didn't speak either. She just held them. Damien stood back. Let it happen. That afternoon, Lena sat between them on the floor, a hand in each of theirs. She said, "I'm not your teacher. I'm not here to fix you." The boy tilted his head. "What are you?" She smiled. "Maybe just someone who won't leave." The girl leaned her cheek against Lena's shoulder. "You already are," she whispered. Over the next week, something subtle bloomed. The boy began drawing again. The girl played 3 full notes on the piano. Then 5. One morning, they both stood barefoot in the kitchen, helping peel oranges. Damien walked in and froze at the sound of their laughter. He didn't interrupt. He just leaned against the doorframe. Lena met his eyes. He smiled. Just enough. Late one evening, Lena stepped into the study. Damien looked up from his desk. She held a small object in her palm. "The button," she said. "She gave it back to me the day you nearly sent me away." He stood. Took it from her. It came off the sweater. She slipped into the old gray sweater he hadn't seen in weeks. "Still fits," she said. He looked at her for a long time. Then said, "I never told you her name." She nodded. "No." He stepped closer. "Her name was Elise." Lena touched his hand. "Thank you." The next morning, the twins stood near the garden gate. The sun was soft. Dew still clung to the petals. Lena knelt beside them. "Do you want to walk?" They hesitated. She didn't push. She simply opened the gate. And waited. The girl stepped first. No cane. No guide. Just trust. The boy followed. And together, they walked barefoot through the grass, arms brushing the lavender. From the window above, Damien watched them. His hands rested on the glass. He exhaled. It was the first breath that didn't feel like survival. That evening, they all sat around the fireplace. No storybooks. No rules. Just presence. Lena looked over at Damien. "I think we're starting something." He met her gaze. "Or remembering how." The boy yawned and leaned into Lena's side. The girl curled against Damien's shoulder. And for the first time in years, no one reached for the lights. The darkness no longer frightened them. Not when they'd found their own way through it. Later that night, Damien stepped into the hallway, where Lena stood by the piano. He reached into his pocket. Held out a small velvet box. Her breath caught, but he shook his head. "Not that." He opened it. Inside, a ring. Not for a finger, but a keyring. He held out the estate's front door key. "Because it's your home too." Lena blinked fast. "You're sure?" He nodded. "It always was." That night, Lena sat between the twins once more. She whispered, "Want a story?" The boy asked, "The dog one?" She smiled. "No. A new one." They leaned closer. She began. Once there were 2 children who couldn't see, and a man who couldn't feel. And a woman who thought she had nothing left to give. Until they all chose to stay. What does home mean to you? Place, person, or moment? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone else find their way back too. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.